Hello, everyone. It is 8 o'clock. We're just going to wait a few more minutes for people to log on. If you could use the chat, just let me know you're here. We'd love to know where our audience is from or where they're joining us from or where you're joining us from tonight. So if you could please write in the chat, you can put your name if you want, but where you're from, if you can tell us your occupation. So are you a student athlete? Are you a registered dietitian? Are you a coach? Are you an athletic trainer? Are you a parent of an athlete? Just let us know. And if you also would want to share, let us know what sport you play or maybe what sport you coach. So Carly from Dallas, Texas is a registered dietitian. Hello. Hi from Brazil, New Jersey. Looks like there's also a poll. If you have a few seconds to answer that, that would be great too. We're going to give it a couple of minutes here. Another dietitian from Pennsylvania. Hello. Colorado. We are all over the place. I see some names that I kind of recognize here, which is great. Welcome back. If this isn't your first webinar, you know what our how we run them. And if this is your first webinar, then welcome. We've got a dietetic intern from Charleston. Welcome. Maybe give it another minute and then we will start. So just wait a minute, there's another poll here. So if you could just let us know your age range, that would be good. I see the same little polls here. They keep popping up. So again, if you're just joining us, please just go ahead and throw your where you're from, where the audience is from tonight. We'd love to know. And again, if you tell us what your occupation is, if you're a student athlete, if you're a dietitian, athletic trainer, a coach, a parent, let us know. If you are playing a sport or if you're coaching a sport, let us know too. We would love to hear from you. And again, there's a couple of polls. If you could answer those too, that would be great. But why don't we go ahead and get started? So tonight we're going to talk about carbohydrate loading for endurance athletes. And when I'm talking about endurance athletes, I'm talking about athletes that are participating in sports such as marathons, triathlons, maybe ultra endurance events or multi-day events, long distance cycling. So again, good endurance events, events lasting over 90 minutes. And this presentation, oh, we got someone from Canada here, an athletic trainer from Tennessee, welcome. So the presentation will be about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll allow some time for Q&A. Again, this is very basic. We're only going to scratch the surface, but hopefully giving you some good information to take to use maybe for yourself or to take to use to provide with to your athletes or maybe teams, coaches, just to take back to those that you work with. All right. I am going to ask that just some quick housekeeping, the chat, if you want to chat with each other, but if there's questions, we'll try to do those questions at the end. So if you have questions, please put it in the Q&A. If there's things that you want to chat to each other about, put it in the chat. It'll make it a little bit easier for me because sometimes that chat gets really busy and I'm not sure where the questions are coming from. So, and I don't want to miss any. So please put those questions in the Q&A. Any other comments, you can put it in the chat. Thanks. All right, so carbohydrate loading for endurance athletes. Just a little bit about me quickly. I'm a board certified sports dietitian with about 20 years in the field. I've worked at all different levels, from elite athletes to youth athletes and club athletes. I've co-authored a book. I worked for the Gatorade Sports Science Institute, and I also have a background in adolescent medicine and eating disorders, as well as I've been a coach and an athlete. So what are we going to learn today? Sorry, my chat is a little bit crazy there. So I'm going to move that over. Sorry. So what we're going to learn today, the importance and the purpose of carbohydrate loading for endurance athletes. We're going to talk about the carbohydrate and exercise guidelines for carbohydrate loading, and then of course, some good fuel sources for carbohydrate loading. So carbohydrate loading, what is it? And carbohydrate loading is basically a strategy, really good strategy for athletes. Again, exercising, performing, I shouldn't say, it's more for competition and pre-race strategy for athletes that are performing 90 minutes or more. So we want to basically super compensate the muscle with glycogen. That's what the carbo loading is. So it's a strategy to improve performance by increasing the amount of fuel stored in the muscles. And we use this as a pre-race or a pre-competition strategy. It's not something that we do on a regular basis. It's something that we do before big races, big competitions, big events, and the athlete will consume a high carbohydrate diet while at the same time reducing their activity level. So what is the purpose of that? Again, we talked about it. This is for endurance athletes. You're not going to see these results in sprint athletes or power athletes, but it has been proven, numerous studies for years, that endurance events that exceed 90 minutes, you can improve that performance when you carbo load. So it can postpone fatigue, extend duration of steady state exercise by 20%, and improve performance by 2 to 3%, which may not seem significant, but is quite significant over these long races. It enables that athlete to maintain a high intensity exercise for a longer period, but you don't see those effects in the first hour. So meaning that first hour, you are not going to see that you are going to be faster. You're going to see very similar activity to what you would expect, but then you're going to start to see the benefits after that first 60 minutes. So carbohydrate loading guidelines. When I made this slide, I did day 1, day 2, day 3, but you could take day 1 as, 2 days prior to competition. Day 2 is 1 day prior to competition, and then day 3 is competition day. And I probably should have had another chart where you could watch the exercise go down while the carbohydrates go up and they kind of cross. So day 1, so a couple days out from competition, you are resting and your carbohydrate intake goes up quite high. Same thing on day 2. Again, lots of rest, carbohydrate intake is quite high. And day 3 is at competition. That's where you follow those carbohydrate fueling guidelines for the pre, during, and post competition. And when we say consume 10 to 12 grams per kilogram per day, I'm not going to get into calculating what that actually means, meaning we're not going to calculate if you're 150 pounds, this is what you should have. This is where it is really important to work with a registered dietitian if you are an athlete trying to learn how to carbo load, because it's more than just a number. There's going to be a way, all right, to get that fueling in your system, get that fuel in your system. So here we can see that 10 to 12 grams per kilogram per day is actually really quite high, and athletes sometimes have a hard time getting that fuel in. So that's where that benefit of that sports dietitian to say, hey, this is what you need, this is how we can break it up, this is how we can break it out throughout the day, and these are the things that you like that would be beneficial for you to eat. So some tips there, you want to eat frequently throughout the day. If you're just eating these huge meals, it's going to be really hard to get that fuel in. Again, you're kind of overloading the muscle. So you are going to be eating a lot of carbohydrate, but that's the way that it works. So we're kind of overloading to super compensate the stores. We want to avoid high fiber foods. May cause some gut distress. And the last thing we want to do a couple days before a race or the day before a race is to have any stomach pain. So trying to eat some low fiber foods like pasta, pancakes, waffles, cereal bars, baked goods, some yogurt, white rice, things that are going to digest quickly and again help super compensate the the muscle stores. And then again, sometimes it's hard to eat so much that you might want to just focus on, adding some of the carbohydrate rich fluids as well, in addition to the fuel, in addition to the solid foods. So sports drinks are great, low fat chocolate milk, yogurt drinks, fruit smoothies. And again, these are all things that that a sports dietitian can help you with as you go through to really figure out how to do this, how to eat the amount of food that you need to eat, when, how to space it out, and really just prevent that gut overload. So some of the side effects, there's really only one that is talked about, but some athletes may feel like a heaviness or a stiffness that they complain about. And again, not all athletes feel this, but sometimes they complain, hey, I feel kind of heavy. My legs are kind of heavy. I feel a little bit stiff. But with extra glycogen storage, you're going to retain water, which is, again, not a bad thing, especially as you are competing in these long endurance events. So having that additional water is what sometimes gives athletes that heavy or maybe stiff feeling. The good news is that this dissipates very quickly with exercise. So pretty much, as they start exercising and they start the competition, they start that race, it's really nice that goes away and that feeling goes away, and no worries on that part. So are there any questions? I am going to pull back the chat, but we are going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to pull up the chat quickly again. Oops. Sorry. All right, I don't see any questions in the chat, but please, I'm going to close that up. So if you have some questions or you'd like to respond here to this case study, please throw it in the Q&A. That would be really helpful. All right, so the case study, Taylor, 30-year-old female, is going to run her third marathon. She's had trouble completing the first 2 marathons despite following a solid running program. Taylor realizes that she has neglected her fueling program and sought advice from a sports dietitian. Now that the marathon is nearing, Taylor and her sports RD have begun to discuss her pre-race fueling plan, including carbohydrate loading. So for Taylor, for a marathon runner, what would be the benefit of carbo loading? And again, if you can throw those answers into the Q&A, or maybe. Yeah. So what would be the benefit? Again, throw that into the Q&A. What would be the benefits of carbo loading for a marathon runner? And why would we suggest that she participate in the marathon or carbohydrate load prior to the marathon and not prior to, say, a shorter distance 5K or 10K? So we want to improve that performance. Yep. Postpone fatigue. Sustained energy. Yep. What else kind of happens in marathons where you could kind of get yourself in trouble? The goal is to make sure that you're bringing fuel with you, but just in case that kind of goes south, maybe, who knows, you lose it somehow, you can't find it. There's a lot of different things that happen. You've got hopefully some excess carbohydrate until you get to the first station where you figure out, what your fueling plan is, topping off those glycogen stores. All those things are important. Okay. So carbohydrate loading for marathon runner, super important. See a lot of marathoners make that mistake of not kind of paying attention and thinking they can just make it through without paying attention to the nutrition plan. So at what point should Taylor reduce her exercise and increase her carbohydrate intake? All right, I'm looking at 2 things here. I did open the chat back up, but if you guys can go into the Q&A, it would make it just slightly easier so I don't miss any comments. So 3 days before is a great idea, before the marathon. You can see the changes 48 hours prior by basically tapering off, resting, Some athletes, though, have a longer taper, and it really depends on what you're doing. It really depends on your plan. Your fueling plan and your exercise plan need to work in conjunction with each other. So 3 days prior is perfect. That 48-hour period prior, reducing that exercise to very low and increasing the carbohydrates is important. Some like to do it a little bit longer, and that is fine too. Again, I'm going to look back. I see extra fluid stored with glycogen. Does it help delay dehydration? Yeah, having some extra fluid is also going to help with your hydration status, but it doesn't give you the go ahead to not hydrate like you should. All right, meaning if you're doing these endurance events, if there's an athlete doing this, or if you're making sure that you are working with an athlete, you say, hey, what is your nutrition plan? You want to make sure that they are hydrating from the beginning and not relying on what is stored. Is it a bad thing to have more fluid in the body? Absolutely not. Is it beneficial? Yes, but we don't want them to use that and say, okay, I don't need to hydrate then, especially in these long events. It can be dangerous. So for carbo loading, what types of foods? What would you do? What would you prescribe? What would you want to consume if you were the athlete during that carbo loading period? What foods would you want Taylor to consume, or put yourself in that place? What foods would you want to consume, and how would you want to do it? I don't know why, but sorry, I'm taking a second here because I see that there's some things in the chat, but I cannot see them. So I am not sure why that's happening, but I can see the low fiber carbohydrates. There's definitely something that Taylor should consume. I have a question here. Is there any benefit for carb loading in sports like soccer, rugby, having in mind that the players may play the entire game? And the answer is it's very different. It's not, I don't see a benefit really for that particular sports. You really want that marathon, the triathlon, the long distance cycling, when it's stop and go so much, it's a little different. And yeah, they may be playing long periods of time, but it's the stop and go. I don't see how it's going to benefit too much. So the answer is no. We really want to keep it towards those endurance sports. So that's a great question. What else do you think Taylor would want to consume? Low fiber carbohydrates is great, but what exactly would that mean? What would you want to consume if you were carbo loading? Fruit snacks, bars, rice, pasta, sports drinks, right? And then again, we want to spread this out. So, we want to make sure that the athlete is eating 6, 7, maybe even 8 times a day, splitting it up to not, again, overload the gut, but making sure that there's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and 3, maybe 4 snacks throughout the day. So again, we're getting the carbohydrate in, we're sustaining it throughout the day, and we're giving the body a chance to absorb, all right, and feel good. Another question here, is there a certain amount of fiber that the athlete should remain below in comparison to 14 grams per 1,000? I actually really don't know if that's a particular recommendation. I did not see that anywhere. I think this is something that each athlete is going to have to play with a little bit, in the sense that, some athletes can eat a lot of fiber and have no problems, and other athletes, if they eat too much fiber, are going to have a stomach problem. So I think that's going to be an individual thing that, again, a sports dietitian really can help with. A lot of times when I'm working with athletes, I don't focus, not a lot of times, all the time, I don't focus on numbers. I focus more on opportunities to fuel, and then having the athlete come back to me and say, hey, this works. This doesn't make me feel good. This makes me feel great. I like to eat this. I don't like to eat that. So putting all those pieces together, that's really kind of the art of the job is working with the athlete to take the actual the numbers, but turn it into reality, and realizing those numbers are a goal or maybe a range and not necessarily die hard numbers. So do we have any other recommendations for Taylor? And how do you think, now that we've got a solid running program and a fueling program, I'm sure that she will be able to complete that marathon much better than the first two. So if you can, more info, oops, hold on. A lot of different questions all of a sudden are coming. So foods high in carbohydrates and low in fiber. Does carbohydrate loading benefit long distance obstacle races, a combination of running and strength events? Again, I think it really depends on the exact event and what are going to be some of those running and strength events that are happening and how long. So I really can't say, yes, it would work for this particular event without really looking at the details of that particular event. So is most of it going to be running, moving, some sort of cycling, and then a little bit of stopping in between, or is there going to be a lot of kind of stopping in between? It really just depends. And again, a lot of these things depend on the athlete. Some athletes really like to carb load and some just hate it. Some don't like that feeling if they feel that heaviness and it just psychs them out. So it's not something they want to do. Oftentimes, as sports dietitians, we have to continue working with the athlete and making sure that they understand the literature. And sometimes it takes a lot of convincing to help them kind of get over some of those more of those psychological barriers, so to speak, to get them to be able to perform where they need to perform and help them see why we're saying what we're saying. So are there any other? I am going to close that chat because it is in there. And are there any other questions there? So you can keep them coming. If you have some more questions in the Q&A, please put them in there. Here's just a little bit more on some of the carbohydrate loading basics, some of the things that we talked about. So you can go ahead and scan that for some more information. I told you that I had co-authored a book. There's that, and you can find it on various websites to buy. Some references. This will all be online, but I wanted to quickly go over what My Sports Dietitian is offering. They're offering a new plan, one-on-one sports nutrition coaching. It has launched last time that I was talking to this group a few weeks ago. It was just starting and now it has launched. So, check it out. It's a great place for one-on-one sports nutrition coaching, whether you're a coach, whether you are an athlete, athletic trainer, whether you're another health professional just trying to get some more information. This is a really good place to go. So check that out. It's 2 weeks free. And again, it's a one-on-one coaching. And here is that QR code. You can take it right to that site, the My Sports D site, and learn a little bit more. Also in that My Sports D site, I can go back a little bit. Whoops. Actually, it won't be in there, but actually go back to here and then My Sports Dietitian site. You will be able to see all these other resources that we have available, not just on carbohydrate loading, but a whole plethora of topics related to sports nutrition. Of course, if there's something that you want to see that you can't find, please send an email in. They're always looking for different topics that we can talk about on these Wednesday night seminars. So please put those in. Are there any more questions? I hope that I got them all. Sorry about the confusion there a little bit for that chat and between the chat and the Q&A. Oops, I'll go back. Someone asked me to go back. I hope there is the piece. Carly, I got Carly's question. What else? Does anyone else have any questions? Is anyone else I guess the other question that I have is for anyone here that's on this, are you running any races? Are you cycling in any long distance races soon? Are you helping anyone in particular with carbo loading, or have you yourself tried it? That would be an interesting thing to share. Anyone working with anyone? I will tell you, years ago, I think one of my, sorry. I will tell you, years ago, I will never forget one athlete that I worked with, or that we worked with. She wanted nothing to do with the nutrition part. We did a VO2 max test on her. She went out to do her marathon. She was actually predicted to run a really great race based on her physical and her exercise regimen, but she tanked pretty much 2/3 of the way through because she didn't have a hydration plan, she didn't have a nutrition plan, and she didn't carbo load. So really important as you're working with these athletes to make sure you just really emphasize, exercise is great, but it's really only half of the solution here. And then we will need to make sure that our athletes are paying attention to those fueling plans, and that we're kind of pulling them on board with not only, the pre, during, and post-race fueling, but we're also trying to get them to listen to some of the other things like carbohydrate loading. All right, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. If you do have questions, please just email my sports dietitian and we will be happy to answer them even after this is finished. Thank you so much. Have a great night.